Thank you. A little tired, but... Good evening. Thank you for joining us for our curriculum subcommittee meeting Tuesday, October 13th, 2020. Our agenda this evening, we have a few items for curriculum, pre-K and kindergarten remote schedule, break times for students, and then any other business needs to come before curriculum. Is the superintendent, if you wanted to...
Yes,
Okay.
thank you, Mr. DiAugustino. Hello, everyone. So the most feedback we have been getting from parents and our teachers is the length of the day. And that's not only for kindergarten and pre-K students, it's pretty much for all students being on a computer for that long. Mm-hmm. As we know, for grades 1 through 12, we are required to follow the time on learning, which this year is down to 935 hours. I think, is it 935 or 950? I had the...
I think that's what you told me.
For time on learning. Yes. I think it's down to 950 and 835, I'm sorry, for grades, 835 grades 1 through 5 and 950 for grades 6 to 12. And the reason for the reduction in hours is because of the DESE going from 180 days to 170. But for pre-K and kindergarten, they do not fall under those required time on learning hours. So, okay. Again, the biggest complaint we've been getting from our parents and our teachers is the length of the day for a kindergarten and pre-K student being on the computer for 6 to 6.5 hours, even with the break times in between. So, obviously, this has to be negotiated, and we also have a survey that went out today to our parents about the length of the day. Especially, we did one for kindergarten and pre-K parents, but we did also one for parents K to 12, pre-K to 12, just to get their feeling on, remote learning and how everything is going and the assistance they're getting in technology. So we'll send you that in your Friday packet. So by Friday, we should have a good amount of people that have responded. So we just wanted to talk to you tonight about a different option for pre-K and kindergarten as we are in the remote. Again, this is just for the remote learning period, and it's basically moving them to a half a day. And I know June's going to has.
Do you want me to jump in?
Yes, please.
Okay.
She
so
worked on this.
There are a couple of slides. I don't know if you want to.
Oh yeah.
Yep. So as the superintendent was saying, we have heard from many, many parents. We've certainly heard from our teachers, from our principals, about the concerns around having too much screen time and about the developmental appropriateness of really young 5 and maybe even early 6-year-olds on a computer all day long. And what we found, what we've heard again over and over, is that for young students, there really is an inability to maintain attention for long periods of time, and that's just developmentally appropriate. And that our youngest students, pre-K and K, require constant supervision from whoever their caretakers are, whether it's their parents or they're in another daycare environment. This becomes a real challenge. And so what we're proposing is that we think about a way to create smaller class sizes and again include some meaningful alternatives and some more opportunity for independent learning, again for our pre-K and our K students. We know that smaller class size when we're in person allows for individual attention and support, and what we're hearing is that this would also be beneficial in a remote learning environment. We have some robust online learning platforms, Imagine Learning, ST Math. We just reintroduced Raz Kids, and our teachers have been very responsive to having that online resource available to them and their students again. One of the things that we would have to do in moving to this model is that all specialist lessons would become asynchronous for our kindergarten students. And this would also allow us to be really thoughtful about building in playtime and in movement breaks, which we all know is so important for our youngest students, for all our students, but particularly our youngest students, and it's essential for brain development. And so our proposal, and we've talked about a couple of different models, and this is kind of the one that we landed on is in thinking that it would be the most beneficial, that we would split our kindergarten classrooms up so that they would be in two cohorts, a morning and an afternoon session, and we'd basically assign them to the cohort that would be their cohort in the event that we are able to begin hybrid schedules. So they would be with that cohort of students. However, on Mondays, we would have all of our students together, so the entire class and the teacher would meet with the entire class in the morning only. And then the cohorts would switch every other week. So one week AM, PM, and I'll show you a chart that illustrates that. And that when the students are in asynchronous types of learning during the day, when they're not with the teacher, they'd be able to choose online and independent activities. So this would give our families and our children, our students, a lot more flexibility. And we do believe that this is a much more developmentally appropriate schedule for our youngest learners, because at the beginning we talked about kindergarten, and I said 5 and 6 year olds, but really in some instances we're talking about 3 and 4 year olds at the pre-K level. And I did meet with Laurie Mason, and we were able to think about strategically about how this would impact our integrated pre-K and integrated K classrooms. And we think that this would be a model that would benefit this particular group of students as well. At the Arnone School, we do have a full-day integrated pre-K program. At the Angelo, Arnone, Downey, and Raymond, we have integrated K programs. So Laurie indicated that the IEP, although it reflects services in targeted areas, 5 times 30 for reading, for example, she does believe that smaller class sizes would really attention that our students need. Again, same type of online learning platforms are available to this group of students, whether it's Lexia, Imagine Learning, Raz Kids, etc., again, dependent on students' IEPs. And then, as with the gen ed students, the specialist lessons would be asynchronous. And again, this is Laurie, and you can see that this is really repetitive, but at the same time, I think it highlights the importance of playtime and movement breaks for young children. And so here is an example of what a pre-KK schedule would look like. I think it's orange-green, Mike. Is that what we selected for colors? Yes, good. And so you can see the Monday reflects a half-day schedule for our students, and that would be, again, all of the students coming together as a full class. And then if you were assigned to the orange cohort in the AM, you would be with your teacher, if you're with the orange cohort, receiving live instruction. And then the green cohort, again, live instruction in the afternoon. We started to work out these hours, but as the superintendent said, this is still in the process of bargaining. And then you can see this would be the alternate week, where now you have the green cohort who would be attending morning session, and the orange cohort would be attending afternoon session, with both sessions receiving live instruction from the teacher, the teacher that they currently are assigned. And so Laurie wanted to take some time to think about how this would affect special education programs beyond the integrated programs, because we do have substantially separate programs in kindergarten, and there are some K-1 classrooms that are city resource rooms, and those aren't classes that necessarily we wouldn't be able to use the same model because of the nature of what's in their individual education plans. But one thing that we feel positive about, that Laurie feels positive about, is that class size is small to begin with. And so we're talking about 10 students in a class with a teacher, and for the most part 2 support staff. And that some of the programs, because they service students in grades K and 1, so they're mixed classes, we wouldn't be able to shorten the school day, because grade 1 students have different time requirements for the length of the school day. And we do have students that have been retained in the previous year. Students with disabilities right now are navigating a full day remote learning. environment with support from the teacher and support staff. And what Laurie is hearing from the teachers out in the field is that struggling students in these programs are working closely with their teachers, and the teachers are working closely with the parents in order to be able to make some modifications to students' daily schedules based on the need of the student, and being able to do that directly with the parent has been beneficial. And our teachers are building in movement breaks, again, even though it's a full-day program. And that communication with parents in these instances is really happening on a very continuous basis. And then finally, as far as substantial separate programs, we know that high-need students require a modified day. Again, very individual. Those decisions are being made on a case-by-case basis. Class sizes in these particular programs are 5 to 6 students. And again, teachers are working directly with students and families. So there is that close daily interaction and that opportunity for communication. And having the opportunity for more individualized instruction, we know, is benefiting all of our students, but particularly this group of students who really are our highest need students. And with these particular classrooms, these would also receive asynchronous specialists. And as far as online learning platforms, we have consistency across the school district for students around these platforms that include Teach Town and Boom Learning, and those particular programs are very specific to special education. And so that is our proposal. Happy to answer any questions, but I actually just looked briefly at the initial survey results, and one of the questions for our kindergarten parents was whether or not they would support a half-day schedule, and 76% of the families that responded yes, that they would support a half-day schedule.
Just to clarify a few things for myself. So on the time on learning, they count both synchronous and asynchronous, correct?
Correct.
They're counted equally. It's not like one's counted. Yeah, okay.
No, they count both. Yep, you can count both equally.
Okay. And then, on the having the green, orange cohorts, and again, I probably just misunderstood what you said. So they wouldn't switch, like if you're an AM student, you're an AM student every week. If you're a PM student, you're a PM student every week.
They would switch. In our proposal, 1 week, you're the orange. If you were in the orange maybe I'm misunderstanding you, I'm sorry, but if you're in the orange cohort, let's say it started next week, you would go in the morning. If you were in the green cohort, you would go in the afternoon, and then that would flip the following week. So
right.
that students would have an opportunity to participate in both morning session and an afternoon session.
And, all right, so as one of the parents who will be affected by this, and so when you did the survey, and I'm not surprised to see 76% support half-day, just based on my own experience, what I'm seeing with my own child, that makes sense to me. But did the survey also include that switching off?
No, it did not include that, but we could include that.
Well, I'm thinking about it, like for a parent who's trying to make sure their kid is, there doing what they're supposed to do for whatever time it is, whether it's 3 hours or 6 hours, whatever it is, and also trying to plan a work schedule. Okay, so this week, Johnny's got class in the morning. Okay, so I have to do everything and next week I got to do everything in the morning. I just think that would be very challenging for families for planning. I get what you're saying too, of the going in the morning, and you don't want them to get too used to probably not having to get up and be ready for school in the morning. There's probably all kinds of reasons for it, but I think for planning for families, that could be pretty challenging. I don't know if anybody else agrees.
I think that you make a good point, and we could certainly investigate that. Part of the thinking is beyond getting students into a routine is that in the past, and this might be me showing how long I've been in the Brockton district, there was always sort of this conflict over whether when it was morning and afternoon sessions for kindergarten. The afternoon session people always sort of clamored for the morning session. So it was really thinking about giving students and families equitable experiences, because some people might feel like the morning is more just productive for student learning. And there is actually some research that does support that, but at the same time, I do hear what you're saying. I think it would be important to hear from families. But that was the thinking in switching off week to week.
Right. Yeah, I mean, if it's possible, I'd like to get some feedback from parents. I mean, maybe I'm in the minority on that thinking, but I think it's worth looking into, because I just imagine that would be pretty challenging for a lot of families to try to plan that. And then families that maybe the kid, their student is at a daycare with a grandparent, with a sitter, again, scheduling that and having that flip-flop all the time. I'm just, like I said, just trying to think of some of the challenges that might create scheduling-wise. But if we can get some feedback from families and see what, what their thoughts are on that, that would be great if we have,
Yep,
if we can do that.
just put it in.
Any members of the committee have any questions? Mrs. Sullivan?
I think it's, what June has described is beneficial to the children, because the children will get the morning and then some in the afternoon. So that when they do come back full-time, that's where I feel as though the plan was made, and more, with that thought in mind. Although I see, what you're saying, Mark. I definitely see what you're saying. So maybe if we get the feedback, or maybe if they could trade at a certain point where, as these morning kids went, like, how we used to do it with kindergarten, whereas they went in the morning, the first half of the year, and then the second half they went. So something like that, so that the kids would get the exposure in both
Yeah.
areas.
So maybe we could.
That could be a good
We
compromise.
could think
Do
about
it in this
that.
chunk.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah, I
Right.
mean, this is, again, only for remote learning, because we know once we
right.
get students back, they would be back to a.
It's easier for families to plan
Absolutely.
a few weeks out rather than just 1 week at a time. I mean,
Yes.
Yep.
yeah, that's a great idea.
I just think that it'll benefit the kids more, and I think that's what we always vote for, is
We
to
can look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good
Thank you.
point. Absolutely.
I think just one more important thing, we did talk about small class size, but I think it really is important to note that our kindergarten class sizes are really increasing. Right now, we have quite a few kindergarten classes that have 26 students in them. So you can imagine how challenging that is to teach a class of 26 kindergartnens virtually. So this would give us an opportunity to really reduce class size.
Yeah, and again, if I had to pick what complaints to get, it would be that people are getting too much, and which shows you how hard teachers are working and how hard administrators in the building are working to make sure technology is right, and the IT staff and the support staff is, again, when you're getting complaints that we're getting too much, and we understand that, because in front of a computer is too much all day. But it's much better than getting complaints that, I'm never seeing anything.
Right.
My child is home with 3 hours of nothing to do. But that hasn't been, I'm sure there's pockets of that here and there. That hasn't been a big complaint that we've been getting at Central. I've been getting, and again, this shows you how hard people are working that the complaint is it's too much, and we understand that, and that's what brings us, I won't bring us, that will bring us to the second agenda item, but I'll stay on the first one for now.
All right, does anybody else want to comment on the first item?
And that, again, we'll talk about that, and also will be Friday. We meet again in negotiations, so this is subject to negotiations as well, so we'll discuss it there, and we'll probably have an update for you next Tuesday.
Okay, and that kind of answers what I was going to ask. You're not looking for any, motions or votes on this at this point?
No,
Okay, all right.
there's
Okay.
still things that have to be hashed out.
Right, I figured. All right, so if there's no other questions or comments, thank you, June, for your coming tonight and presenting to us. As always, it's informative, and we really appreciate all your efforts and the assistance you have given us in working our way through these crazy or sometimes difficult decisions that we've had to make as to, the best way to still provide an education for our kids, so thank you. So Superintendent, break times for students was next on the agenda?
Yeah, so I know this has been a topic of a conversation as well. We built in 5 minutes of break times in the schedule, but that's because of time on learning. There are other schools that have built in 10. You cannot count break time as time on learning. It's almost like passing time or lunch or homeroom when you're in school. Those cannot, and even out of school for lunch and homeroom, you cannot count that towards time on learning. So, and I think teachers have been being very creative, and I think this is something that, we need to have teachers working together, because I think some of them have come up with great ways to get their students away from the computer and doing work independently at, grade level specific and appropriate. And we'll continue to work with them, but I think as we have these Monday half days, we have principals making sure, and I will make sure that, they're allowing teachers time to work together to fit some of the, I don't want to call it break times, just time away from the computer where they can be doing something else rather than sitting on a computer. They can be doing something educational away from it if it's a nice day outside. And I think teachers are being very creative with that. And I just think we have to capture that for some of our other teachers and just have them sharing best practices, because we do, and we've heard that, it's just too much time in front of the computer. And, the charter school has 10-minute break times, but they have a longer school year, they have a longer day, so they have more time to fit in to reach their time on learning requirement. We don't, so we really couldn't build in any more than the 5 minutes, but there are creative ways to get students away from the computer, and also teachers as well, because it allows them to, look at student work, just different things they can do while they're in the class, or maybe meet one-on-one, or, meet with a small group of students while other students are, and then obviously rotate. So those are the things we're looking at. I know it's been a question, but, and it's been a long time for students to spend on the screen. And if kids are like my kids, not only when they get off the screen, they're on their phone. So it's total, the screen time is just screen time constantly. And it's a ton of screen time. So we are thinking of very creative ways, and teachers have done a great job of working around this and making sure they're getting kids away from the computer. And we'll continue to focus on it and have teachers share best practices. But you and I, Mr. DiAugustino, we discussed it a couple weeks ago, and we want to make sure that we followed up. And I know that you've been getting feedback from parents as well. And we recognize, being fully remote, how much time students are spending on the computer in front of a screen. And, we got to make sure people are moving around and have that time away.
Yeah, and that's kind of the balancing act, right? We know that too much screen time for children is and adults too, but for children, too much screen time is not healthy, and we know that. But we're also trying to mitigate this other health risk with the pandemic. So I think, and we're trying to find balance. As you said, Superintendent, we've been having these conversations. Mrs. Saban-McGuire and I have had these conversations more than once in the last few weeks, of how are we going to balance this out. And piggybacking off one of your comments, the teachers are doing an amazing job of trying to figure out how to make this work and do what's best for the kids. They are in a real tough, their job is tough anyway, but now it is even more challenging than ever. And so I do want to just, applaud our teachers for the wonderful job they're doing with trying to, get the kids through this and still be able to have the kids, getting the education they need and in this new mode. So we had looked at another district that had longer breaks, and they have the same time on learning, or is that not the case?
Yeah, they did have the same, but their school day is longer.
So what are they doing? Are
The
they
year
doing
is
longer in the evening, or?
They go longer in the afternoon, correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in order to add more breaks during the day, and like this other district did, we'd be getting out maybe 3:30, 4:40, every 3:45, something like that.
You probably, yeah, it'd be a half hour longer for each.
Be a half hour longer to
Yeah.
build in those breaks, right? So I don't know, again,
And you'd have to change the contract.
and we
as
have to
well.
change the contract, which, right, so the time involved in doing that, not that we wouldn't, are unwilling, but it would just, that's not a short-term
No, no,
solution.
it's just basically about, creativity.
Right,
And again, just making sure that we're allowing teachers to work together to,
Right.
share their best practices. And as we get in now, I think it's, I don't know, I think last Wednesday, I said we're around day 18 or 19 of the school year. And I think as we get in further to the year, I think people are, how hard they're working. I think and how hard the students are working. I think they're starting to, really start judging of when their students need break time as now they get to know their students.
Right.
I think they do it as a grade level specific.
Yep.
Obviously you can allow older students to go off and do assignments and do some work independently, work on presentations, those kind of things. Younger students obviously would need more direction, and you have to make sure any time they are away, it's productive time. But
Right.
it's just the way you structure it, and it's age appropriate as well. So it's just, we
Yeah.
need to make sure teachers are having that time to plan together, work together to, share creative ideas on how they're allowing break times during the school day.
makes sense. Okay, very good. Any member of the committee comment, question? Ms. Mendez?
So you mentioned that homeroom is not considered time in learning, correct?
Which would,
Homeroom?
homeroom is not
It's not,
considered
right?
time on learning, no.
So I know it depends from school to school, but about how long is homeroom right now on average?
It depends, and I think usually it's only 3 to 4, maybe 5 minutes in some school. We eliminated it at Brockton High School back when we changed the schedule. I don't know, it's better be 10 years ago now. We eliminated homeroom, and we made first period be the
Okay.
period that students would then, pretty much attendance would be taken, and we eliminated the homeroom. And then in some schools, like some middle schools, their first period is like an activity period or a win period, and that's considered homeroom, and they take attendance, so they might not have to subtract that time away. June, elementaries is homeroom, correct? Not homeroom, it's more they get in there with their teacher and,
Right, so elementary is different because they're with their teacher all day. So homeroom usually consists of morning meeting,
morning meeting.
yes.
Okay. The reason why I asked is, but it sounds like if it's just 3-4 minutes, it won't work out. But because it's not learning time, I was just wondering if that could be cut a little bit shorter to then, like, let's say we cut it 5 minutes shorter, then we would give that 5 minutes to the break time for students, but it sounds like
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
super short anyways.
we can look at the schedule again, to see if we can steal any time, here and there, but, it's like the lunchtime is tied towards obviously prep time and teacher lunchtime. We have to make sure those stay the same. And, again, middle schools, and you'll see this in my evaluation, the middle schools are usually, they're on different time schedules. So we could work with each individual building to make sure that they're looking at, that time we can capture back to give students more time away from the computer. It's a good point.
All right. Anything else from any other members of the committee? Okay, well, that is the end of our agenda for our curriculum subcommittee. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. And a second. We have a motion to adjourn properly seconded. All in favor? Curriculum is adjourned.